President Olson, could you please introduce our
yes.
Red Badger, Mr.
Paul
Ostrowski.
Ostrowski, our Red Badger. He's more blue at this point, but we had to have him give a formal introduction to himself. But Paul will be speaking about his professional life, his personal life, bringing us from the time he was born to the present day. Paul, you're on.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm Paul Ostrowski. It was kind of interesting. 37 years ago, I was thinking about this. My dad was in this blue shirt, and it had a symbol, and it was a Rotary. And I never thought about it until now. And it just tells you how the cycle of life works. You just never know where it's going to take you. And my dad used to say, you know, life is a mystery to be lived, right, but not a problem to be solved. And you just never know how things will come back to you. And a couple of years ago, you know, Dave Olson came to me and said, hey, I'm doing the Rotary. I said, really? I've heard about it. My dad used to be in it. And my dad, who's 95 this coming week, was in Rotary all into the mid-80s. So it just tells you how much friendship the Rotary brings to you. And my goal today was just kind of talk about myself and why I joined the Rotary. And so I've been a native Bay Arean most of my life. I grew up in Saratoga when I was a kid and had great memories growing up there and was able to meet incredible friends in that part of town. And one of them is Wendy. Wendy and I go back 37 years ago.
Really, Paul? I'm only 29.
And it's amazing how time flies. It's just crazy. And as time went on, I went to Dianza College and pretty much did some general classes, took some business courses. I knew I wanted to go into business, and I found out that I really enjoy sales. So I kind of decided school wasn't for me anymore and went into working for a contract furniture company selling office furniture. And I did office furniture sales for 15 years for a couple different industries. Pivot Interiors, I don't know if you've heard of them. They're a big Herman Miller dealership. Worked for a company called Corporate Environments up in Redwood City. And then I worked for myself for about 5 years. I had my own broker furniture business. I just went out to businesses, got the deal going, and got a check for a deposit, went to my different providers and bought the furniture and delivered it to the customer. Found out it takes money to make money. And I had a couple customers that never paid on time or couldn't pay or whatever the reason was. So I decided working for myself wasn't really where I wanted to go. And I went to go work for these other companies. And then 9/11 hit. The industry went completely down to 75% of business loss of my current accounts. I had about 300 different companies I was managing. And at that time, I was working for a Sam Clark office furniture. And I was in their rental furniture business division. And we were doing about $150,000 a month in rental furniture. And that went down to $5,000 a month in billing. So I was let go, was out of work for a couple months, and landed an opportunity with a company in the copy print business called CPO Limited. So I started to work for the copy print industry. I was in this industry for 9 years. Worked for Xerox for a couple of years, for about actually four and a half years. And now I work for Cogent Communications. And so Dave and I have been with Cogent Dave's been in it for a year and a half, 2 years now, and I've been in it since October. So it's been a wild ride, but it's been a great life in the corporate world for me. And my personal life, I've been dating this fantastic lady, but she's 8,500 miles away. Oh. She lives in Cebu, Philippines, and we've been together for 3 years now. And hopefully we'll be having her arriving in November, December, hopefully.
Permanently?
Permanently, hopefully.
Cool.
So we'll see what happens where that takes life. And currently right now, you know, the reason why I joined the Rotary is because I wanted to make a better difference in my community. And when Dave brought this opportunity to me, I thought, yeah, I think I should look into this. My dad did it. I saw what he did and the benefits that he had received from it, from the people that he met. And I feel that, why not? So I've been now with the Rotary since October, since I started my job, and it's been good. And are there any questions?
I'm sorry, the company you work for now?
It's called Cogent Communications.
And what?
And we are a fiber optic internet provider where we help companies. We're kind of like the Comcast and the AT&T, but more for corporate accounts. And to kind of put it in a simple format. So anytime a company requires to be connected to the social media or to the internet, we're the ones that are providing the internet to them. We manage about 25% of the world market when it comes to the internet. Cogent's been around for about 22 years this year. About 1,400 employees worldwide. We're in 53 different countries and growing. I think last year we grew about almost 20%.
What size businesses do you cater to? I mean, from where to where?
Yeah, so my main focus is, I'd say 30 employees or more, up to about 300. And that's my corporate account market that I'm looking for.
And the lowest size? 30?
I say 30. But I'm willing to talk to anyone because, you know, people and companies, they do grow and they expand. And so I'm willing to talk to everyone. Doesn't have any particular market. I mean, we're like big or small, we work with them all. That's pretty much what we do.
The backbone, right? Fiber optics.
Yes.
Does Cogent own that, or are they like?
Great question. So all of our lines are dedicated lines. So that means that we own our lines, and that gives the benefit for the customers that it gives them access to their main fiber optic line. So if there's ever a problem or a challenge, we can troubleshoot it, or the customer can do their own troubleshoot if they have to. And the average time can take a couple of weeks to 17 days for us to set it up to 90 days. It just depends on the location of the customer's office play.
Are there particular profiles of customers? In other words, are there ones, for example, that are particularly data heavy, like say a credit checking company or something like that you go after?
Yeah, definitely. Billing, you know, law firms, banks, all types of businesses that have high use of data would be an ideal customer for me. Corporate day. I'm considered, our title is a RAM, regional area manager. Yeah, thank you. And so you know, our customers can have many different challenges, and because they either have big files or they have large staff, we are shuffling data on a day-to-day basis. Any other questions?
Have you been married before?
I have not.
Okay.
I have, let's see, 12 nephews and nieces.
I thought you were going to say 12 children.
I have yes.
That he knows about? Yeah.
So, you know, the last 9 years, I was helping my dad out off and on. And then my mother had cancer for about 10 years, in and out of hospitals for those 10 years. So I kind of put my life on hold for them and helping them out a lot. And I'm glad I did, because it gave me the time to consider my mom and dad. And, you know, I kind of feel like I got to just take one day at a time and enjoy the journey.
Paul is one of 5 children.
Yes.
That's where
Many know everything.
He's the youngest of 5 children.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, man, not the baby.
Yeah, my grandma would say, Paul's going to take care of you in your old age.
But did she say it in English or Polish?
Polish. And French.
French. It's on that side.
I'm half French Canadian. My dad's Polish.
So when you got asked to become the Rotary and your grandfather or your dad had done the Rotary, how big? First of all, how big was your dad's Rotary Club? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, we know the one.
I never
Which
really
one?
even. I didn't understand what Rotary was. I mean, until I started to ask him in my 40s. I said, Dad, were you in the Rotary? He said, yeah, I was in the Rotary. And I said, how big of the group? So it was pretty large.
Do you know which one it was? Which club?
So now you have some conversation for him this week, and because your dad's turning how old?
95.
95.
Wow.
So now you know what you can talk to him about this weekend.
Yeah.
Then you can come back and that's your homework assignment.
Yeah, find out what
Come back.
Yep.
Because he went, so my dad lived in the Saratoga house until he was about 85. And then he moved to Rossmore. And then he reconnected with the Rotary. Now, Rossmore is a community after One Creek. And about 9,000 people live in this community. That's where he rekindled the Rotary and went back into it for a couple more years, like 5 more years.
You know, Paul, Wendy and I set up speakers. We'd love to have your father come and speak.
Well, you know, that'd be fantastic. My dad's in a wheelchair bound type of guy right now. So it's, and his hearing's okay. He has hearing aids. So he's doing pretty good. But
if he went up to Rossmore,
yes.
He's no longer there.
he could join us on the Zoom.
He's not in Rossmore.
Oh, that's a good idea.
You'd have to have Denise there or something. So he's get here.
Yes. So,
Paul, I'd like you to tell everybody what your very first sales job was. The number first one.
My
the
number.
Big high sign.
You talking about when I was like young age, or talking about when I was 19?
Yeah, like 19. They were.
So starting at 19, I sold cars.
There you go.
At Courtesy Chevrolet on Steve Creek.
Oh, yeah.
And I was there.
Just so you know, one of our longtime members
Right.
was a gentleman named Max. His last name happened to be Carl Chevrolet.
Ooh.
And then his son, Tim, for many years. But yeah,
Yeah,
Matt, they were your competitors.
I worked for the Hamilton family. Is that you know them?
I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah, they own several dealerships. One in Chico, I think, and in Arizona. And then one here, but now Anderson, I heard, bought them out.
Everybody, then whoever, you know, what's it, DG, Del Grand Dealership Group.
DG.com?
Yeah.
Del Grand has bought everybody else.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see how the Bay Area has changed so much. How our generation, all generations who've been here for the last 50 plus years have seen changes. And you know, it's exciting to see this area go to another level, but it's kind of sad too, because a lot of the good traditional restaurants and places to go are kind of disappearing.
Yeah.
And the new energy is coming through. So it's going to be interesting. But my goal for the Rotary is only used to get to really do more service. And I'm looking at trying to see what it makes sense to put together some type of reading program for kids. When I was a child, I was dyslexic, and I could not read or write until I was about 16. So I really wanted to look into this and put together a program that could really benefit kids, because there's a lot of kids out there who do have learning disabilities. And I think it's important that we get them on the right track before life goes on.
Yeah, the earlier the intervention, the better. Absolutely.
Right. So I'm really excited to see that we're working on this park program, and maybe as time goes on, work on another project. So, but I just wanted to take a couple more minutes and then let the next speaker come up and go from there. Any other questions, thoughts, ideas?
Thanks, Paul.
Great.
Well, thank you.
Good.
Okay. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Frank Jewett, who will enlighten us with his background. Frank.
Yes, right. Dave asked me one thing. He said, "Does everybody have their compass?" And
I have it on my
and when I oftentimes give a talk, I'll lead with that, and that's just generally for the younger ones to understand that we all have to have a direction and a focus. And one of the things that's exciting about this group, before I start about myself, is we have a focus and we have a direction and a value set to serve. And that's the underpinnings that has legacy and tradition behind it, which has to continue to be fostered and manifested. And so I'm gratified that we've got the group that we have, the composition that we have, that will allow us to go forward and really make some significant contributions in the community. And I remember my first speech at San Jose State in communications, and it was you know, you have to do that introductory speech, and you have to talk about yourself, you know, and it was how I got there. You know, how did I arrive at San Jose State? I'm from Frank Jewett. I'm from Southern California, as you can tell by my accent. And let's dispense with the height issue. Is that I'm actually the shortest person in the room. I'm 6'5", which is 78 inches, and I've been measured many, many times because I'm in the military, Navy reservist for 20 years now. And the reason 6'5" is short is because we're all tall in ability. Some of the most dynamic, interesting people the last century weren't necessarily tall in stature, but they were tall in mind, ability, and accomplishment like yourselves in many different ways. And I started off, I was a Little League washout. And so, you know, I didn't get all upset. You know, I had trouble catching the ball, and I was afraid of the ball, and, you know, kind of the bad news bears thing. And so my sister, her claim to fame is that she got me into running. And we had in elementary school, we had a teacher named Mr. Ruderman, and he was getting kids excited about running in the 70s. And we started off, the incentive was, and I grew up in Riverside, San Bernardino, and we had the mountains, as you guys have been through that area, the natural landscape. So there's a mountain called Little Mountain. And so what he would do, he would say, if you can make it up to the top and back, you can get a scoop of ice cream. So how are kids not going to do that? I mean, you know, for me, I'm an adventuresome person, so of course that's what I'm going to do, right? So I'm trying to get as many scoops in as I can, right? Before dark, obviously, you know, that was always the cutoff time. And remember, you know, as Paul alluded to, so many things have disappeared, especially the Thrifty's ice cream that was a nickel a scoop.
Yeah.
Many of you remember that. I mean, you can still buy it over there right across the street, but it's now 59 cents. It's 89 cents. But it was at one point a nickel. I mean, it was a nickel a scoop. So obviously, on a teacher's salary, he could afford to do that. And the speech went something like this: is that I ran for ice cream, but then for the opportunity to win trophies and medals and awards, and then the opportunity, once I became aware how important education was, to move forward and get a track scholarship. So I started running at moved from baseball to running, and there was a club down there called the Rialto Road Runners, and Ronnie Lott, who was with the 49ers, went to one of the rival high schools, Eisenhower High School, by the way, and went on to USC. So there's a lot of local talent, just as there is up here. And so we ran with this group, and the group got much larger, and so it became the Southern California Road Runners. And so throughout Southern California, and then that was when they had the kids programs, much the same way as soccer is today, but running had that same kind of mechanism. And some of it's been dismantled now, unfortunately, because it's so important for youth to have these outlets. They're inexpensive. You know, the other things cost a lot. And certainly my mom was a social worker for 40 years and didn't have a lot of money. You know, my dad had his issues. He was in the house, but, you know, he was a hard drinker and a hard smoker, and we lost him at 65. So, you know, but a very organized, thorough guy. He was an Army guy. Taught me how to tie a tie, you know, which I didn't. You know, I remember high school graduation. I go, Ma, I just want a clip-on, you know, and I realized how awful that looked. I said, my God, what, you know, I go to my dad. I said, Dad, can you teach me to tie a tie? You know, so people are amazed I can tie a tie without even having to look in the mirror, you know, because I learned how to tie a tie. So, you know, family is important. And so, some early claims to fame, and these are just data numbers, is that when I was 11 years old, I had the second fastest time in the country. I ran a 5:01 mile in Gresham, Oregon. And I have a good buddy that I've known, you know, like you guys, for 30-some years. He ran the fastest time in the country as an 11-year-old. Came 1-2. He ran a 4:57 mile. He was from a running family. They're kind of gods down there. And so he ran 4:57 as an 11-year-old. Here I come. Jewett comes in 5:01, you know. And that began that start. And I had just begun running. So it was kind of one of those things that I hadn't been running that long. And then I was 11th in cross country in the nation. We took this old motorhome out to Kettering, Ohio. It broke down. Someone put some raviolis in the microwave. It blew up. the heat went out, and for a kid that has never been to the cold, I mean, at that young age, it was amazing that we survived that. But it was a great experience, and just continued to do well in running. And I jokingly tell people, because when they look at my height, they go, "I know you played basketball." And I have to tell them, and they're always disappointed. And I said, if I had only known what the salaries would have been, I'd have majored in basketball. And so continued to do well in running in high school, and ran at the community college. And then I had my coach at that time had pulled together some of the best runners in our local area to try to put us very strong, which he was able to do. And I owe everything to Coach Beeman for many things. And so I got to the point where we call it peaking. And so I ran the fastest time in the state of California at that time. I ran a 30-38, 10,000 meters, which for you guys, to break it down, is 25 laps on the track, no stopping, no getting water, you know, this is, you know, but so it was very much ingrained. I've run 2 marathons. I ran the first one when I was when I was in ninth grade, which about killed me because I thought, oh, I know what I'm doing. I've got this. Because I started running when I was 11. Of course, I would know what to do, right? Of course you don't, you know. Mm-hmm. So your first marathon, those of you who think you want to do one, you really need to prepare. Preparation, like they say, is real, you know, because at 19 miles, all of a sudden the lactic acid buildup, you can't walk, you're hobbling. I mean, all that horrible stuff is real. And so I made it. I ran 3 hours and 21 minutes. And I said, oh my God, I can't do that again for a long time. And so then I had another buddy, this group that got together, we said, okay, let's all do a marathon. So it was about 6 or 7 guys. And then as time went on, they go, I don't think I really want to do that. So me and this other guy, Alan, who's a very good friend of mine, we would run at like midnight. Obviously, you can't do that in Southern California anymore for obvious reasons. It's too dangerous. My mom she said, Frankie, now you know that you can't, it's dangerous around here now, you know. Okay, Ma, because you could run at, in the neighborhood at that time, but now obviously you can't. So anyway, we do the San Francisco Marathon. And I ended up running 2 hours, 21 minutes for 41 minutes. I'm sorry, 2:41 for my marathon time, which placed me 5th and was again my fastest marathon time. And I just point this out that it took a lot of discipline to do that, to be able to hang on and do that kind of stuff, especially when you're preparing. And everything that we're doing as an organization and all the endeavors that everybody's doing in your work life, previous work life, all required certain levels of discipline. And so my foundation was the running, and then the opportunity to get a scholarship. So I'll just tell this real straight because I know we're running out of time before I get to me. I thought I had it all figured out again. I was supposed to go to UC Irvine, and I was doing all the work preparing to go to UC Irvine, and I had ended up getting injured before the college state meet. And so the coach, so I didn't run well. We always had that one day that you really need to do well, and it just didn't happen. So I go to the coach, and he's in the bar, and I said, Vince, I said, what's going on with the scholarship? He says, Jewett, there is no scholarship. And I'm like, he's got to be kidding. I mean, but he's in the bar. So I figured, so I asked my coach later, I said, Coach B, what's going on with the scholarship? And he says, well, did he tell you that there's no scholarship? I'm like, so anyway, another guy I had run against happened to be there. And he said, did you ever think about San Jose State? And it wasn't on my radar screen. So the short of it was they brought me up for a visit. Got out, was all excited about being flown up and, fussed about. And then I said, well, sure, I'll come up here because I believed that this area had many of the things that I was looking for. I could have gone to UC Riverside, but it was 20 minutes away. There was no adventure because I'd already run in that area and so forth and so on. And it was Division I. So that presented, for those athletes in the room, you always want to try to, move up to the next level. And so the level of competition required me to go somewhere. And those of you who lived in this area realize that San Jose State, before I got there, obviously, was known as Speed City. And we had many, many world record holders, and a lot of controversy, but a lot of great things that have come out of this area. Bruce Jenner did not go to San Jose State. He went to San Jose City. So just clear that one up. Yeah. And so anyway, I took the scholarship, came to San Jose State, and decided that I wanted to be a business major. I thought I was going to be an investment guy, and got into classes and said, yeah, I don't want to do this. So anyway, I graduated in economics, and I said I wasn't going to go into banking. Became a banker, did that for 8 years, and learned a lot in that area. And I did affordable housing. And so through that avenue, it brought me in. They said, Jewett, we need you to go out and find out what's going on. This was the CRA Act that some of you guys may not remember, but it came in during the Jimmy Carter era. And then it began to just take on more shape with each president. And so it demanded that people go through education training. So I would teach people about buying their first house and understanding that process. And they had to fill out their little book and things like that. And then later on, they said, no, people don't need to know about all that kind of stuff. But I was required to go to a zillion meetings of all kinds and do a lot of community service stuff for the bank. I worked for San Francisco Federal, a small mom and pop, and I worked in the savings and loans industry at that time. And as you know, they're no longer here with us. And that became sort of the precursor. And then I'm very involved in politics. And someone asked me, they said, Jewett, you've been involved. You're on all these committees and stuff. Have you ever thought about running for office? I go, no, it sounds exciting, you know. And they said, well, why don't you run for state assemblies? And I said, well, gee, you know, that sounds, you know, exciting. It's always exciting until you actually get involved and you're like, what did I get into? And so I was one of the youngest Republican nominees for the state legislature in the downtown district in '94. And Jim Canine, which will speak to this group at some point, was the other nominee over here. And, you know, I learned, I call it a dress rehearsal for what I was doing. But it gave me a sense of, again, purpose, because you had to organize yourself. You had to articulate, as we have to articulate, what we're doing, why we're doing it. You know, when you knock on that many doors, you know, and you have to ask about, you know, they have to, you know, it's all a daily inquisition about why are you doing this kind of thing. And so I bring that up. So I had that opportunity and met many people that became, you know, very good friends. And from that, they said, Jewett, obviously we need to have you do something at some point. So in '98, they had me run for, I think it was '98. We started running for the college board at that. I became a member of the board of West Valley Michigan Community College District Foundation member. And then in 2000, one of the members resigned, and then they said, Jewett, why don't we try to get you on? And then I got violently sick and I couldn't campaign. I mean, it was like, you know, I had like appendicitis or something. And it was like I was recovering. And so I was hoping that people would remember that, remember the name. So anyway, I was gratified that I became appointed, then I was elected, and I served a term as an elected official for a term on the West Valley Michigan Community College District Board, and have helped in terms of education. And then 9 years on the Civic Improvement Commission for the city of Campbell, and then 9 years on the Envision Board in terms of housing. So I'm gratified to have been out in the community and had that chance to see what's going on, to see what the depth of the need is. And it doesn't seem to be abating. It seems like there's always a continuous need, which is always pointed out in our meetings here. And so I then also joined, you know, if I didn't have enough to do, I joined the Navy Reserves. And my recruiter said, she says, you're never going to join. You're just, you know, let's stop it, right?
How old were you then when you joined?
And then, it took me 3 years to finally get all the paperwork together, and I did, and I stuck with it. And so I've been a Navy reservist as a petty officer for 20 years now, and amongst all the other things. So there is that depth of commitment no matter what. And you do an oath. I mean, this isn't just, you know, I'm joining a club. I mean, you have to make a very deep and abiding commitment that, you know, you're protecting and defending the Constitution of the United States of America. And every time that you're out there, I'm representing you no matter where I'm going, even if I'm not out there, you know. So needless to say, I am not currently married. I have met this gal out in one of my trips in Pennsylvania, but I don't know if she wants to come out here. So she has a special needs child, and I just don't know. And I don't have any children. You know, my commitment and my love has been all my community service, and that's where I have just sunk years and years, hours and hours, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to be associated with great people like yourselves, and then the other, I'll just finish off with. So then I kept fooling around with politics, and then in 2010 they said, you know, why don't you run for Campbell City Council? And I had moved to Campbell and got involved, and never realized just how tough things. It doesn't matter what city size it is. There's always some things to deal with. And so I ran for Campbell City Council and missed it by 1,500 votes. And I said, well, we got to put that aside. So then I went back and went to graduate school, went to the executive MBA program, and without a lot of help, you know, that would have not happened. So I'm grateful for the rides and all kinds of crazy things that occurred to actually do that. They're not giving them away. You know, they don't care how old you are or whatever. I mean, it was, and those of you who are in graduate school know how, you know, especially when you do it older, how hard it is. So I think that in order to continue to do better as a person, you have to continue to educate yourself, either formally or, as my dad would say, he says, Frankie, he says, in the kitchen at at the fraternity house in San Jose, he says, I don't care how many degrees you get. He says, the one degree that you must have is your DDS degree. This is a little coarse, but doctor's degree of the street. Just meaning that you have common sense, you know. And so with that, I will stand for a question or two. No Biden questions. But yeah. So I haven't done my politics, and I'm focused on my business stuff now. I'm working with a company called Cepheid, and they are the manufacturer for the testing kits for COVID-19 and 31 other infectious diseases. And I've been in other technology areas, Lucent, AT&T, GE. And so, you know, so pretty much a sales guy most of the time. And then now on the manufacturing side of things. So that's a little bit about me. And I appreciate you guys, and thank you for the opportunity to expound. I normally probably wouldn't, you know, mention all those, you know, those stopwatch times, but thank you.
It's great.